That's
Yes.
okay.
Just
We'll
one
keep on
second.
trucking.
Technology.
Pretty much. I mean, this is why we need a vaccine. Obviously, there's more reasons, but okay. Sorry, I'm just making sure. Happening now. Watch the video. Okay, part 2. Live on Facebook. Okay, so sorry for anyone who got booted out of the last one. And people are welcome to rejoin. And yeah, so we were just talking about Reiki and kind of reconnecting that back to, again, that idea of, sometimes the way humans go about things isn't always the best, or sometimes that can dilute the actual spiritual practice. And then you're also saying, I thought, something really interesting in terms of kind of like how your mood affects what you get out of a Reiki like practice and out of a Reiki session. And like it makes me think of going back to something you were saying earlier, Tony. So a quick question for you: like, did you first get involved with tarot as that more of a like party trick type thing, or did you first come to it kind of as the spiritual practice?
It was a spiritual practice. Like I said before, it is something that sort of floated around pop culture. I was familiar with. I never had done a reading. It's interesting because when I look back on my life, I certainly was interested in the occult. And as a kid, I was fascinated by all those kinds of things. But I suppose I stuck to a pretty, I don't know how to word it, standard view of life. So I kept pretty straight and narrow. Partly probably because I was raised Roman Catholic, and one of the things that Matt said that resonated for me is that I would still consider myself Roman Catholic. In fact, this spiritual practice and this exploration has helped me get back in touch with that. I have to do some translating for myself sometimes to make it stick, but I feel like it speaks to me more now than ever. But to your question of where I came across the tarot, one of the things that was happening after I had moved to Ottawa, once I finished my PhD at McGill around 2017, is I suppose I just felt miserable. I'd moved to a new city. I didn't have any close friends. It was a deeply felt pain that I didn't quite know what to do with. And, I was lucky to be able to access a counselor, but sometimes it's working by talking, but sometimes you're maybe just not getting anywhere. And I entered a moment in life where I was basically, my brain wanted to do me in, essentially, if I can put it that way. And I was done. And I was lucky enough to have a friend who was sympathetic to that and wanted to talk to me, and we exchanged stories. And one of the things she said to me was, let me read your tarot. And at that point I was like, sure, why not? Like, things seemed bad, why not? And one of the things that surprised me greatly in that reading is how much the cards told a story that really resonated. It was like it was too close to home. And so, I trusted she wasn't doing a party trick. And that's one thing that I've jokingly said to others. It's like, I am so inept. I cannot do a card trick to save my life. So when I'm reading the cards and shuffling and all that, they are coming out as randomly as they can. This isn't it's not something that I want to, it's not a trick. It's something that's supposed to be genuine. And I think part of the genuine aspect to it is you take this deck of cards and you randomly pick from it and then tell a story that you can see yourself in. So she told a story that I saw myself in. And I thought to myself, okay, there's something there. I need to know more. And so I picked up the same deck that she had. I read through that. I read for myself. And slowly over time, I was realizing, oh, this thing is really helping me to understand what is going on, where this pain is coming from, what it is to be authentic and to be genuine in a way that I never understood. Never. I'm a nice guy, blah, blah, blah. But, feeling miserable, doing things that should be joyful and just being on the edge of anger and sadness. And so these were all very distressing events in my life that were starting to add up to the fact that I needed to do something about it. And I still see the counselor, but it's the tarot practice, it's the understanding of the mythology that has really helped me to understand that it is about owning your story and trying to express yourself authentically that will start the healing, that will bring out the compassion, the capacity to love in a way that I never ever thought that I would ever understand. And so tarot has been able to give me that. But and it's one tool. There are many tools, but it's certainly the one that spoke to me. And I told my friend in a Christmas card this year how grateful I was for her for, taking me and reading me the tarot. It's so random and yet it's so meaningful that it gets me.
A happenstance there where it's like you weren't expecting it, you didn't go actively searching for it, it just kind of like came into your life and was the thing that's clicked. And thank you for sharing that. On a bit of a lighter note, something I didn't realize going into this is that all three of us actually were raised in at least the Christian church, because I was also raised Roman Catholic. And again, I think a bit of a classic queer story was like, I don't think I necessarily feel welcome in this space anymore. And I will admit my personal spiritual journey has been a little bit different, and probably actually like the exact opposite of yours, Tony, in that so I don't do like tarot myself, but I do a different card system. I don't know if either of you have ever heard it, called Lenormand, which was like a French system developed in the late 1800s. And similar, it started as like a kind of party trick and parlor game based out of like the playing cards. And I will admit, I started it almost like ironically. Like I had a bunch of friends who were into tarot, and I did it as like, wait, I wanted to be able to go to a party and be like, you still do tarot? Like, I love that for you. Oh, that's so cute that you do it. And then I started like, so I started learning the system ironically, and then it would like, yeah, work. And I would be like, wait, I'm seeing myself in here. And then I do more. And then I like started subscribing to newsletters and like keeping a journal about it, and like bought a deck, and was just like, I think I'm like no longer ironically into this, but that I'm like actually into this now. Like, what happened? And kind of like discovered that spirituality almost like in spite of myself. Um, and so, sorry, I'm also just looking. And so the other piece I wanted to touch on and talk on is that, yeah, and going back to what you were saying, Matt England, about, your mental state affecting it. And then what you were saying, Tony, about, how mindfulness came into the practice. We'll start with you, Tony. Could you share a bit more about that?
Well, I've read some. So mindfulness came from reading. It wasn't something I found. It was something that was introduced through this research in some way. I mean, I'm a PhD. Like, I'm just always going to have something to research. It's just how I'm going to work. And so I did come across some material on mindfulness, and what I found is that it was sort of how I was doing tarot, and mindfulness was able to give me the terminology and the practice to understand what was going on. And so, and maybe I'll backtrack just a bit too. I was also reading psychology books for gay men, queer people. And one of the things that came out in a lot of them was, you have to be your authentic self. You got to sort of go with what you're feeling deeply. And I would end these books thinking, what the hell does it mean to be authentic? Like, I don't know how to be authentic. Aren't I being authentic? So I was sort of a little lost in some of that, and not quite knowing what it meant. And what I found is that the authenticity comes from this idea of being present, and then, giving feelings a space, giving thoughts a space to come up, to acknowledge them, and then to let them go, and to not become the anger that I feel if I don't know, if I've been ghosted and then I'm angry. It's like, okay, yes, that's not pleasant. Okay, and then I can let that go. Or yeah, so it started to help me understand what that authentic self and exploring that and being that meant. And I found that mindfulness is the training of that. So when doing a reading, what I like to try and do for myself, for others, is create a bit of space where you're focusing on the breath, and you're focusing on the breath in a way that it's mindful, so that when your mind wanders and things come up, you don't become that thought. You sort of acknowledge, oh, my mind wandered, I have to return to the breath. And then those thoughts can leave. And the idea being is that when telling the story, when pulling cards, doing a reading and telling a story, what's important for the participant is, if I describe the Fool card, which is the card on the top of the box here, that card is a card about a new beginning, a new journey, taken voluntarily, a call to adventure. When I say those things, what comes up? What does the mind generate? Because you can't stop it. Those neurons are firing, but they are, trying to, I think, to put it in this way, your unconscious is trying to come up, and it's trying to speak, and is trying to say, here's what I need. Here's what your authentic self needs. And so the tarot story is helping to draw that out. So the mindful practice is about hearing what comes up when the story is told about the call to adventure, or whatever other card has been pulled. And I say to my participants and myself, what comes up is important. It's information, and it's there for you to reflect on. It's there to be shared with me, or anybody else they feel comfortable being shared with. Or if something doesn't resonate, well, that's information too. It just means that that doesn't speak to you. There's nothing that, I once had a card come up for somebody that described their materialism. And I knew this person. Her and I were like, oh, you're not a materialistic person. So it was like, okay, let's reinterpret this card for what we know. And this person has a beautifully decorated place, lots of wonderful pieces of art. And it's like, well, that's a material thing, but it's material, it has meaning, it's beautiful. And so, but you sort of need to be in touch, I think, with the bit of randomness that the unconscious mind is, I think, in order to get some meaning from the tarot reading in a way that does help you explore the authenticity.
And so one, again, tarot, it's all about like an interpretation and pulling back and kind of drawing from that, versus like the naysayers of like, oh, this person wasn't able to like predict my future or anything like that. So that
Yeah,
kind of reminder
it's
there.
not prediction. I know nothing about the future.
I mean, who does at this point, really? And then the second, like it sounds like with mindfulness, it's like a really kind of reciprocal relationship in that, tarot helped you kind of connect with your genuine self and become more mindful as you like started doing it. And then you in exchange gave that back to your practice and worked to bring that more to help it's, then further that connection.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Matt England, like time to get your perspective. Would love to know how then you find that mindfulness kind of similarly like impacts the way you go about your spiritual practices and spiritual connections. Oh, unless we have lost Matt England, I'm not certain. In which case, well, if he comes back, we will.
Sorry, I'm here. Can you repeat the question? Sorry about that.
Was just hoping to learn more about the ways that you found that mindfulness kind of factors into your spirituality and your spiritual practices.
It's a good question. I'm just thinking about the word mindfulness. I think for me, it's definitely about having an open mind initially, especially when I'm exploring a tradition that maybe I wasn't familiar with or didn't grow up with. And I don't know if it's human nature for everyone, but for me, I tend to kind of take the bits and pieces that resound the most with me and often they are kind of related to things I've already experienced in my life. I think because I came from an extremely structured, organized religion. So for me, the practice of mindfulness I enjoy because for me, I feel like I don't have to do it in a certain way or say certain things. So, but just being present in everything I do, I find that when I am kind of practicing mindfulness and meditation and things like that, that I'm definitely more centered, I guess.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from that and taking away from that is, one, yeah, it kind of goes back to being present, which I will admit, full stop, I know I struggle with all the time and actually staying in the moment, and it's hard to kind of like not always be thinking about, in particular for me, like the future and what's coming next, and kind of running ahead. And then also hearing that it's a part of that mindfulness, a part of that being in the moment is, that's what helps you connect to the world around you, and to that your spirituality, because again, you're kind of letting go of everything else and being like, I just need to be here right now. So thank you both so much for sharing your thoughts. I will admit we've ended up talking a little bit more than I originally intended in my this is the format I'm going to send you both for the event, because this is just such an interesting conversation and you both have such incredible things to share. But yeah, as I originally told you both, I was hoping we could kind of then add in a little bit of flavor by including a reading, which either for Matt England, if you feel comfortable with that. I can also be the participant. We can kind of decide right now to make sure it's not something that's been pre-planned out. I will leave that choice up to you, Matt England, if you feel comfortable with that or no. Or
why don't you go ahead, Spencer? That sounds
yeah,
good.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, so as said, I wasn't the one who was originally tossed out to receive it, so we're nothing pre-planned here, people. As you can probably tell from my technology experience this entire event.
And that's practicing being present, because you do
Exactly,
sort of go with the
exactly.
flow and adjust on the fly, right?
Yep.
So we could do a reading that I find pretty standard. I like to think of it as what was, what is, and what could be. And that has to do with a lot of what's going on in the mind at the moment. You were saying it's hard to sometimes not worry about the future. Well, the brain is constantly simulating what's going to happen next. Like it is something we do as alive conscious beings. So I do like that spread because it sort of is a spread for the moment, because our brains are predicting the future. We're doing something now, and we have memories and experiences that we use to be able to make the prediction for how to act in the future. So that's a pretty standard one. I like that one. Or if you're more comfortable with a daily reading, we could pull one card and tell a little story from that card. I can leave that up to you.
Actually, probably thinking of the time and making sure that we, also give each other the chance to promote our respective practices, etc. How about we, just end off with the daily reading and just do the one card. As intrigued as I am by the past, present, future one, I'm thinking,
something we could save for another time, perhaps.
Exactly.
No problem. Okay, so I like to shuffle the old-fashioned way, but I'm not always successful. As I said, I'm a bit clumsy. But then essentially tell me when to stop, when you feel like I should stop, and I will pick a card.
Okay, and stop.
And stop. Okay, so the card that has come up, oh, interesting, is this card, Justice. Can you see?
Okay.
So this is a major arcana. As I said, this is the mythological journey of the hero. And justice comes up in the sense, I'll hold the card back up to talk to the symbols. If you can see, justice is holding a sword, and also the scales, right? And in the modern parlance, we have justice being blind because she's impartial and is weighing the evidence, let's say. But in Middle Ages time, that would have been unheard of. Their view of justice is you have to have your eyes wide open to be able to see the world in order to essentially seek the truth. So what a card for today, because essentially I think of what it's saying to you is you're seeking your truth, right?
Yeah. No, and
And
definitely that's
when
a big part of this event. And I mean, that's why I was like, I'm not opposed to, I was like gonna forward Matt England originally, because I was like, it's weird if I ask for a reading for myself on this event that I'm the one that's thrown together, but absolutely always looking to kind of further my own connection and understand myself. So yeah. So as we start to wind down the event, let's start with you then, Tony. If people like what you have to say and are interested in getting a reading from you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so I use my Instagram as a bit of a blog to explore the tarot. So my handle there is Tarocchi Tony, and Tarocchi is Italian for tarot. So it's TAROCCHI and then underscore Tony.
I'm gonna get you to
And
spell
yeah,
it
it can
out again so
contact
I
me
can
through
post it in
there.
the comments.
Thank you. Yeah, can contact me there to talk about it more or peruse my posts, because a lot of what I'm trying to do is sort of connect the wisdom of the tarot, let's say, to all kinds of different elements. So currently I'm reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I'm posting about RuPaul and some of the things he discusses, because in the end, it all kind of comes back to this idea that you're the hero of your own journey, and deciding how to go about exploring yourself and exploring the world, I think can be helped by the tarot or whatever speaks to you in a sense, and exploring that's important. And I'm love to talk about it, and I consider myself an amateur reader, so I'm happy to help guide people through a reading if they so wish. So thank you.
Sorry, can you spell out your Instagram again so I can post it as a
Oh
comment
yeah,
and people see?
TAROCCHI_Tony.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
And Matt England, at the beginning of the event, you had mentioned that you will be doing a group to delve into the themes of queer magic and to kind of the idea of queer spirituality more through Max. Please tell us more about that.
So starting towards the end of January, we're going to have a total of 5 sessions meeting every other week. And when I initially thought of the idea, I had a lot more structure around it. But then as I really started planning it and exploring it, I felt like I was informing the conversation too much by putting that much structure around it. So it is going to be a maximizer program at Max Ottawa. If you register for the event, part of the registration, and it is free registration, but when you do register to join the group, the discussion group, you will be receiving a copy of the book, as well as some materials to be able to some kind of a journal and some markers and things like that, just to be able to explore. Because the great thing about this book, Queer Magic, is there are, for each section that discusses a different queer take on spirituality or a movement, there is a kind of an activity at the end of each section. And so that's where the materials come in. So even though we're going to be hosting the group on Zoom, everyone will have the same book and the same materials, and it will be more of an 5 weeks of exploration rather than a structured, we're going to discuss this specific form of spirituality on this day. So I definitely look for the posts that will be coming out on social media in January. And I was going to do it on a weeknight, but I've been kind of rethinking that. And I kind of think I'm going to do it on the Saturday evenings. Because I think people have a little bit more flexibility on their schedule that way.
Okay. Thank you. And as said, if you're listening, yeah, like keep an ear out for, or an eye out for those posts. But if you're really interested and would like to kind of get yourself on the radar, this is up to you, Matt England. Would it be all right if I like put your email, your Max email in like the comments, and people can kind of be like, hey, can I kind of be on the radar for this? Or, would you prefer
Sure.
them
Yeah,
to
of
wait for the
course.
posting? Sorry?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. Go ahead and put out my contact info.
And then the one I will quickly promote is a part of this is, when we talk about mindfulness and spirituality and, being in the moment, that is all about your mental health and your mental well-being. And we know that this has been a tough year for everyone. And the holidays in particular can be, I think, tough for a lot of LGBTQ2 plus individuals, whether it's, rejection of family of origin, meaning you're not able to really be around people for the holidays, or, whether it's your seasonal affective disorder is kicking in, or, whatever's going on. So just want to remind y'all that Max Ottawa does have some mental health programs that you might be interested in checking out. And if you go to maxottawa.ca, we have in particular our mental health navigation program that can help you connect with a counselor, social worker, therapist, psychiatrist, whatever, from the LGBTQ2 plus community, and help you kind of get that mental health, as I believe you both, Tony and Matt England, have expressed throughout this conversation. And I myself have also been in therapy at various points or another, and it can be helpful. And then we also have our peer support program. And so if you go under the Max Ottawa, or go to the Max Ottawa website and check under programs, it'll say peer support. And there's a number that you can call in the evenings to talk to someone about what's going on in your life. And then we're also looking to improve that access, include live chat and other forms of connecting with us. So stay tuned for that in January. But in the meantime, you're welcome to call us at that number in the evenings. And if someone's on a call, or no one's available at the moment, we will definitely, please leave a message and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But beyond that, considering it is 7 right now, thank you both so much for participating in this. I know I learned a lot and just found this generally a fascinating conversation to have. In particular, I think, queer guys are often drawn to, different forms of spirituality, and just kind of, as said, we're all like, we've all had some relationship with the Catholic Church, or the Christian Church, that's kind of like impacted our lives, and kind of, when those traditional avenues are closed off, I think, that doesn't mean you don't have a spiritual side or a spiritual realm to you. So, taking the opportunity to normalize that and encourage people to explore it, I think is really important. So any final things either of you would like to throw out there, or would like to include before we, let everyone go about their Friday evening?
I just want to thank you, Spencer, for setting up the event, and for being such a great host, I guess. Moderator is probably a better word. So thank you for that.
I mean,
Yeah,
it helps that it was interested in the topic and I learned from it. So yeah.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to thank you too, Spencer, for taking an interest and for bringing this together. I think talking about these things is the best way, and I encourage everyone to reach out and to own your story. That's the way that I've healed, or am healing. Let's make it more of a journey than a conclusion, because
Yeah.
life's complicated, and like you said, we don't know what's next, even though there is light at the end of the tunnel for COVID. So I wish everybody a safe holiday, and thanks to Max Ottawa for doing this.
Beautifully said. Thank you both, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you. Good night.
Now I figured out how to de-live this.